Ashtaka. Puri means city, and Ashtaka means 8 things. What are the 8 things that move from body to body? So 5 of these are called tanmatras, and then man, buddhi, and ahankar. Man, buddhi, and ahankar is this mind thing. They are always together. You could say man, buddhi, and ahankar, we can separate it, but basically they are at the same level, and you cannot really distinguish one from the other. They work, their functions are different, but they sort of work in a cyclic manner. So this is the Sukshma Sharira. When they talk about Sukshma, now other definition could be there are 16 elements that go with it. You could say with a Panch Tanmatras are basically the framework for senses. For example, Sparsha is a Tanmatra. Shabda is something of hearing, is a Tanmatra. Gandha is a Tanmatra. So these are the framework. The senses are actually the derivative of these things, So this is how the Sukshma and Sthula will work. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I mean, other example I can use, and maybe it's not perfect, but you can think in terms of our laptop. The physical laptop, as it is, get destroyed. That's like a body. But the software within that can be carried forward by just taking it out in a disk, or the stick, the stick, right? You can carry that thing and put it in a different computer. Even this computer goes destroyed, it doesn't matter. So body is like this physical computer. The stick that carries the data is the one that is the software, that is the mind that carries your sanskar into next life. Okay? And think about internet as a sort of way that Atman is, which is everywhere, but you don't see it anywhere. So when you connect to the cloud, you need the internet, right? So your data may be stored either in the cloud, or it may be stored in on the hard disk or whatever, or your stick. So the stick can be moved everywhere. So that's an idea. So basically, physical body is like a laptop itself. Stick is like your mind that carries the sanskar in the next life. And internet is the Atman that is prevalent, that makes you connect everywhere to the information. Am I making sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
I still have one clarification question, Rajan bhai, if that's okay with you.
Go ahead.
Okay. So Buddha stopped at the Jivatma, right? He did not go to the Atma level at all. Is that correct?
He denied, he didn't want to discuss something beyond what we experience in our life. He said, why worry about something that you cannot prove? So he didn't say it doesn't exist. He just didn't want to give an answer. Call it that way. So he didn't positively say it doesn't exist, but neither he said that it exists either.
So Rajan bhai, in Buddhist philosophy, is it okay to say that nothingness or zero is the basis of this idea, Rajan?
Yes, it is true. And obviously that was amplified in Nagarjuna. But this is how Buddha put it. Buddha said, is that very fact that you constantly look for something beyond what we experience is the reason why you are dukhi.
I see. Okay.
So don't even worry about what you cannot see, what you cannot experience, because that is the very source of your unhappiness is. So concentrate on what you experience, what you see in the world, and don't worry beyond that. Because beyond this is nothing but shunyata.
So Asmitano sawal છે મારે એક સવાલ છે.
અને તો પછી આ કેવી રીતે મોક્ષ કે લિબરેશન કેવી રીતે આવે તો
for him the ultimate liberation is to merge into nothingness. When our desires are sort of given up, what we reach a state of perfection. For him the state of perfection is to dissolve yourself into nothingness. I think let
One-
me repeat the example of last time.
Yeah.
For Shankaracharya, if you use a glass, half glass with water, for Shankaracharya, the perfection was fill up the glass to completeness. That is the state of perfection. For Buddha, extinguish yourself from the imperfection that you have, which is half the glass, and make it completely empty. That is the state of nirvana.
Oh.
So it's a reverse or diametrically opposite viewpoint. Call it that way. So you fill up the glass or you empty the glass. Buddha said your glass is half empty, which makes you unhappy. Remove it and you will become perfect. Shankaracharya argued exactly reverse.
Shankaracharya said,
One
do more.
clarification.
Yeah.
So નાગાર્જુન તમે જે મેન્શન કર્યું એ ઘણા વર્ષો પછી બુદ્ધ પછી ઘણા વર્ષો પછી
About
આવ્યા કે
200, 300 years later.
later? Okay, thank you.
Dinesh bhai.
So basically what Buddha, the Vedanta
નથી
says,
સંભળાતું નથી.
am I muted?
No, I
Okay, so basically Vedanta says go beyond and look for beyond, while Buddha says something that you can't understand, can't achieve, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Exactly right.
Just
That's how
enjoy
his
it.
view was.
Okay.
He didn't want to he did not want to speculate about something that we cannot experience.
Yeah, but unless you try, you will never experience, right?
Well, I mean, Shankaracharya actually said, now since you asked me the question, Shankaracharya, I mean, it comes in one of the slides down the road. Shankaracharya said, this is what he said, either Buddha was a fool or a knave. Knave means dishonest. Fool because he believed in what he was saying, or knave who knew that what he's saying is nonsense, but still propagated that. So that's how Shankaracharya put it.
Okay.
And who knows what Buddha would have answered, how Buddha would have answered, we have no way of knowing.
Right.
But basically he said that he knew it, or he knew that he's talking nonsense. He still taught that, or he was so dumb that he didn't know what he was talking about.
But Buddha stops at the Sukshma Sharir.
Buddha stopped at what?
Sukshma Sharir.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to the next slide.
Before that, when we are on this,
Yeah, go ahead.
when you said the experience of realization, just now you mentioned about it, how someone can tell you about the experience of realization?
Well, let me put it this way. Somebody has raised the question, was Buddha enlightened or was he self-realized? And the distinction is made is like this. Enlightened means, from the point of Vedanta, is knowing that this world is impermanent. Knowing that what I perceive to be me is impermanent. That is enlightenment. And self-realization is next step, where knowing all those things are true, are false, and knowing the right thing which exists underneath that is self-realization. So one of the Vedantic scholars said that Buddha was enlightened, but not self-realized. Am I making sense?
Yep.
Okay. Now, obviously, Buddhists won't accept that idea, but this is the concept coming from Vedantic idea. You know, self-realization means knowing that I am not only not Jivatman, but that I am Atman. For Buddha, knowing that I am not a Jivatman is the end of the story.
Right.
But all these self-realizations, Buddha or a Shankaracharya or Vedanta says, so when they say self-realization, they are only connecting with the higher self-realization, not like day-to-day life also. If we self-realize ourselves, we can grow up. So that is not the thing. They always start at the hierarchy at the top and not from the bottom to go up.
Well, obviously, Kashmir studies हमने गई काले परमजी से बात करी थी यहाँ पे हम कि just think about it. There are people like Raman Maharshi and RMK or at least they are believed to be, that they just acquired self-realization instantaneously, without any effort. Suddenly, like Ramana Maharshi at the age of 15 realizes that I am not this and this, I am the Atman. How did it happen to him? Your guess is as good as mine. And then there are stepwise that you do this, you go to the next step, you go to the next step, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, you go to the stepwise, or mix together, and you come to a point where you realize that I am beyond this. But there are entities where just things happen. Like Aurobindo claims, how true we have no way. Aurobindo claims that in the jail of Alipur, when he was put in the jail, he suddenly realized that the world changed completely for him. He was seeing the world from the same world that we were seeing, but he was seeing the world in a completely different light. Vivekananda also explains that when Vivekananda is touched by RMK, he suddenly sees the world in a completely different way. Now, how did that happen? I have no idea. If you ask a psychiatrist, he might just say that that was delusion. But Vivekananda himself describes is that like I'm walking in this on the road and suddenly I don't see those things anymore. I see completely different things. Now, what experience is that? I have no idea.
Nobody knows.
But the point
Might
is
be
this.
the time to look for a psychiatrist for us. That
So-
might be.
Now, let me put it this way. Since you asked me the question, I'm going to answer the question. There is a legitimate scientific view, or at least there is a scientific idea. Parietal lobe epilepsy, as it is called, is a type of epilepsy, seizure, epilepsy, where actually people who have parietal lobe epilepsy seizures, they actually have a divine experiences of some kind.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Really?
So
Interesting.
what this one neurologist has said is that I have no way of knowing what happened to RMK when he was having this samadhi suddenly, when he's talking and suddenly he is in samadhi, is that one of the psychiatrists actually, not psychiatrist, neurologist has written saying that what he might be having was parietal lobe epilepsy seizures. Now, I'm not saying that that's what happened. Actually, I had asked this question to one of the Swami of for Vedanta Society, and she didn't like my questioning. I said, what do you think about this? That RMK was having a parietal lobe epilepsy, which was not diagnosed.
I will elaborate on this one. What you are saying is that consciousness is brain based. All these neuroscientists, all these material people will say that it is an epiphenomena. That's what they think. Now, what is epiphenomena? See, look at the Shunyata in Buddha and Shunyata in our sense. Kashmiri Shaivism also will say Shunyata. So the thing is to understand deeply what Shunyata is. Okay, but let's go to this brain thing. So if what happens is that if you do not have this individuality, think in the morning you do meditation and ask one question, where does this individuality come from? When you get up, you have this feeling of I. Have you ever experienced something where there was no I? You just got up and you went to brush the teeth and then it says, oh, I have to do something. I came later on. See, so that experience of non-I basically is what they are talking about. But is this non-I based on my brain, or is it something up in like an internet? Is it in the computer itself, or is it the internet that is behind it? If you can distinguish the internet from the computer's own memory, in this sense, you would realize are closer to this enlightenment view. That's all this yoga, any yoga will do is trying to take you this lie thing. It will take you out of your individuality. And Ramakrishna Mission people would not like it because you are bringing back the individuality, because you are saying this is the epileptic phenomena. This is a brain-based thing. They are all saying, no, you go be, yes, the consciousness is reflected in the brain. Yes, if you are in coma, probably it's not so much reflected, but it is still reflected because the brain is there, the mind is there. But if you go beyond those two things, that is what the real, if you have a realization of that particular consciousness, that's what the enlightenment is. All these people actually reached that point. They were beyond individuality. That's what my explanation.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're making a point, and let me amplify in what you just said. You know, think about in terms of when scientists talk about consciousness, what they are talking about is our day-to-day experience. You know, what we see, what we experience is a consciousness. When we go to deep sleep and we have no experience, you know, are we unconscious or we are conscious without experience? Vedanta will say we are conscious, the consciousness was there, but there was nothing to experience.
In deep sleep.
In deep sleep. Scientists will not agree with that idea. They will, because Vedanta says the consciousness is always there, but there was nothing to experience outside because your mind was in a state of presence. Nothing, mind was perceiving nothing. So the perception happens in the level of mind. If your mind is sleeping, it is not that the consciousness is sleeping. Consciousness is always there, but there is nothing to receive your consciousness or reflect in your mind. That is what Vedanta says. Just think about three-way light. You know, our lamp is a three-way lamp. You can turn it 1, level 2 and 3, right? And you can make it turn it off. Now, does that mean the electricity doesn't exist? It does. Vedanta says electricity exists underneath there, but the manifestation of electricity in the form of light, either dim or higher, is not there because the one that is receiving is the bulb, is not turned on. Am I making sense?
Absolutely correct. The word unconsciousness has consciousness there.
Sarvapriyanand said something like this, and I'm paraphrasing it. Is the deep sleep is not absence of consciousness, but it's an experience of not absence of consciousness, but consciousness of absence.
Yeah.
So the consciousness experiences absence of things. It is not absence of consciousness.
I mean,
It's very hard to understand.
what you are saying is, you know, very true, because I mean, there are days when you say, "Sali aaj ratna ungh nathi aavi barabar," and there are days when you say, "Boy, I slept like a little baby."
Right.
But the consciousness knows that you slept like a little baby, even though you didn't do a doggone thing and slept good. Consciousness knows. So consciousness, if there was no consciousness, you would not know that you slept like a baby.
Right. I mean, that is a Vedantic idea. That's a
Right.
Vedantic argument, right? But make sure that when we talk Buddhism, Buddhism doesn't go that far. It ends at the level of consciousness that pervades, that is an epiphenomenon of the mind. It doesn't go beyond the inherent consciousness that is the underlying consciousness.
The inherent consciousness is there, but it is just for the momentary. What is not there is the continuousness of the consciousness.
Yeah.
Buddha will also say that there is a consciousness, but it is just coming, flickering up. It is like a digital wave. You know, it's the sampling of the thing and not an analog continuous way.
So understanding that it is a continuous consciousness is realization.
Huh?
Say it again.
Understanding that it is a continuous consciousness is the realization.
Is also Vedanta and is also a real, if you, yes. Yeah, so Hinduism
Like if I come to the conclusion about the consciousness all the time, I know that this is because of that consciousness, then I know basically.
But that is day-to-day life. Everyone knows.
No, you don't.
I mean, it's a not an easy topic, but this is the basic understanding, you know. So let's move on to the next one. We'll come to some of these questions that you asked. Okay, so truth level, when we learn about level of empiric reality and absolute reality that Vedanta teaches, that actually came originally from Mahayana Buddhism. Mula Madhya Karika was a text of Mahayana religion in Buddhism, which talked about two levels of reality. The empiric reality that we experience day out, and ultimate reality, which they claim is in Shunyata, and we claim it to be fullness. So that idea of two levels of reality was originally established within the framework of Nagarjuna and Madhyamika Buddhism, which is Mahayana Buddhism per se. Let's move on to the next one. So this is the Chinese version of Madhyamika school. Huan was the Chinese scholar. Remember 6th century, the Chinese who sang or somebody came to India and then took the text of Buddhism and all those things to China and spread Buddhism further down. So this was one of those scholars. Says all dharmas are seen as a particular separate events. All events are expression of absolute. Events and essence are impenetrable. So what he's saying is that those things that appear to be event, there is some continuity, but they are not penetrable. So how do they explain this idea of karma is coming to now that point. All events are interpenetrate. So basically that there is some continuity, but cannot be fully explained. That is what he's saying. And we'll come to the next slide. Okay, Shunyata of Nagarjuna. This is a very important concept of Buddhism, where what he's saying is this. Question is something like this. Does it exist? The answer is no. Does it not exist? The answer is no. Does it exist and not exist? The answer is no. Does it not exist and not most negative? Exist and not exist, the answer is no. So basically all four ways that you can think of, the answer is no. Let me give you a simple example. If you have a bike, is it white? The answer is no. Is it black? The answer is no. Is it black and white? The answer is no. It is neither black nor white. The answer is no. Because what it presupposes that the bike has a color. So when we are talking about સફેદ છે કે કાળો છે, yes કે no, બંને નથી. કે ભેગો છે, બંને નથી. એ પણ નથી, સફેદ પણ નથી, કાળો પણ નથી, એ પણ નથી. So what essentially we are saying is that maybe blue or maybe red or maybe green, right? Because we presuppose is that the bike has a color. So what we are arguing is it black or white without saying, is it blue, green, red, whatever. But Buddha says, none of the above. The bike is colorless. It is not black, it is not white, and it has no color at all. So when we talk in terms of this or that, we presume is that must have a color. And the Buddha says that itself is wrong. Am I making sense?
Yep.
So your assumption is wrong. Your basic assumption is wrong that there is a color.
Precisely. You start with the assumption that the bike has a color. So you start with the assumption there is a consciousness inherent, and then you are arguing this or that. And Buddha says that there is no inherent underlying and continuous thing. That is what he's saying. So very first assumption he says is wrong. Bike is colorless. So that's a simple way of looking at it. Again, it is much more complex, but argument is this. I hope I made it. I hope I made sense out of it.
Yes, you did.
Any question further, or we can go forward?
We are all realized. Next page.
No, Rajan bhai, but you know, if you really look at it a layman's term, Vedanta tries to stretch you, and in stretching your thinking, stretching your understanding, it makes you unhappy because it's trying to get you to a point where it's very difficult to get to, and the inability to get to that point makes you unhappy. While Buddha says, don't worry about it. this is the level and you have it, you are there, and enjoy the life and don't worry about it. So I mean, I'm lost in that sense. Is Buddha was right for a mass, or was Vedanta, or is Vedanta right? I'm confused.
Well, you are right. I mean, there is no easy answer. If you ask a Buddhist, he will say what they are saying is right. If you ask a Vedantist, he will say Buddha is only partially right.
Right, but Vedanta doesn't show a easier path to get to the Atman or the consciousness, while
એટલે બધા બુદ્ધા કરે છે.
Buddhism as a more. Go ahead. Elaborate.
તો આપણે અવતાર ગણીએ છીએ બુદ્ધને.
By the way,
શંકરાચાર્યને નથી ગણતા અવતાર. He is a guru.
By the way, when Shankaracharya argued about either Buddha was a fool or a knave, he is the one who said Buddha is a ninth avatar.
Oh.
So, he knew the kind of argument that he was making both ways. On one hand, he was saying that he was a saint or highly realized soul. On the other, he was intellectual. He was arguing is that either is a fool or a dishonest person. So you can see it's not easy answer.
See, Dinesh bhai, the concept of eternal bliss itself is very confusing, and that is what not present in what Buddha is saying.
He is not worried about that part.
That's exactly what it is. He just says he's talking about happiness, and it is completely dukkha. He's talking about dukkha. He's
How
not
to
talking
get rid
about.
of dukkha, that's all he cares.
That's right.
All right. Nagarjuna and middle way. Middle way is the path of either in between nivrutti and pravrutti. Sort of not be obsessed with the acquisition and not being so obsessed with leaving the world either. And Vivekananda said something like, the one who rushed headlong in this world has lost his way. One who ran away from the world has lost his way. The one who has lived within the world but has developed attitude of staying away from it has won the path. So basically is the idea. So middle way, neither amnu pan nahi and amnu pan nahi. Stay where you are, but develop a mind attitude which makes you detached from where you are.
આપણે તે જ કરવાનું.
That is the middle way. That is the Nagarjuna's middle way also. But he at the end will say, at the end, the reason is because there is nothing beyond this. It's nothing, it means it's shunya, beyond this. So don't get too excited. And Shankaracharya will say the same thing, but there is something beyond that is the fullness or Atman. That's the difference. Call it that way if you want to call that.
Look at Buddha's experience in this middle way. If you look at the middle way, he will come up in many, many ways. કે બુદ્ધને જ્ઞાન કેવી રીતે થયું કે he was અતિમાર્ગી, બહુ એકદમ જ કષ્ટ વેચીને બધું બહુ જ કરતા હતા. He almost came to the point of dying, if you remember the story of his enlightenment. And then one girl came and she just offered a little milk and he drank the milk, and then he realized that I could have died, and without getting anywhere. I mean, that's probably those people were doing those kind of things, ekdam jungle ma jaine, that sort of a thing. On the other hand, when he came from the king family, he also saw that there was in the world there was lot of calamities also there. So probably that shaped his view, that the middle way comes from there, that going into this extreme of the just denying the world, or going into the other extreme of just embracing the world fully in a just without any sense, without any wisdom, is both wrong. So that is where, if you look at the middle way, that is where the middle way came from.
Yeah, you're right.
And that there is this, there was this thing I wrote about desire, So if there is a 12 wheels spoke of the Buddha, there is a little diagram that shows up that will answer if I will send it to you, but around 6 or 7 steps in this process, if you break that, that you will become, you will be, you will not have the next karma, next samsara. So the chain to break is at that level of the things. Because, Rajan bhai, I don't know whether you mentioned that one time, but that Buddha's enlightenment is known as Pratitya Samutpadaya, codependent origination. Many things together, A follows B, B follows C, C follows D. That is the way things work out, and that gives you the impression of our universe, life. So that is the enlightenment. Now, where do you stop? If you stop at some right point, then the past will go away and the future will also go away, and you will be just in the present, and that's enlightenment.
Yeah, you can call, because obviously he's more worried about the present situation and not worry about what may happen down the road. All right, let's move on to the next slide. I will just skip this one. I mean, basically explaining now, as you know, the idea, trying to explain further. Yeah, let's move on. I want to try and come to the idea of karma, what is carrying forward. The Diamond Sutra. It's one of the texts. Diamond Sutra is one of the major texts of Mahayana Buddhism. And Vajrayana also uses some of that too. And it basically talks about the clinging and attachment and all those kind of stuff, So I'm not going to read that, but let's move on to the next one. Nirvana Sutra is another one which is primarily from Tibetan Buddhism also. His again text is basically teaching what Buddha said according to this tradition, or at least they interpret what Buddha said in the way they want to teach it. So let's move on further. I think I'll just skip those. Shunyata and Buddhism. Now let me read this one. When I have this is Buddha, this is quotation from Buddha. When I have taught that Tathagata Garbha is empty, fools meditatively cultivate the notion that it is extinction, subject to destruction and imperfect. The wise know that it is actually unchanging, stable and eternal. So now just think about it. According to Tibetan Buddhism, Shunyata is same as unchanging, stable, eternal, which is the very definition of Brahman. So what it says is this: the Shunyata is a permanent entity, which is eternal and stable, and is unchanging. So when we say Atman is the perfection of fullness, which is unchanging, they claim Shunyata is like that. So I think the Sarvaprajnan said something like this. It's like you're using the same description or same definition and using a different word.
There is a difference though. When they say shunyata, it is shunyata of the objective world.
Yeah, you're right too.
Shunyata of the subjective world. So the difference that subjective and the objective world is important. Shunyata will also appear in Kashmiri Shaivism. There are Vijnan Bhairav meditations that will say you think about shunya, but that shunya refers to the objectiveness of the world. It's right. The object of the world, they are not there. That is impermanent thing. Right. So I think, yes, they are both the same.
Yeah. And then if you look at the second paragraph, that's exactly what it says, what Nilbhai just said. This statement shows that emptiness does not mean absolute absence of form. It merely means absence of finite form. So basically, in the form that we experience is not there, is not permanent. It doesn't refuse that there is an absence of an infinite form. That is what it says. So it's kind of confusing argument back and forth. But you can see that at times almost like you're fighting about the word meaning of a word rather than a description of the word. Yeah.
મને જરા બી ખબર ના પડી આ સ્લાઇડમાં.
Yeah. And basically they are describing the same
totally got lost.
Yeah. They are describing the same characteristics of the Brahman as an unchanging, stable and eternal. But what they are talking about subject and object. So what they are referring to object, that means what we perceive in the world, and
Object is a world.
object is what we experience outside you,
Okay.
and subject is me or us, within us. So it's basically arguing Sunyata's definition or Brahman's definition appears to be same, if not same, almost similar. That is the idea.
Shunyata and Brahman is the same thing.
Well, Vedanta will define Brahman as ultimate reality. Buddhism will define Shunyata as ultimate reality. And one can argue it is two sides of the same coin.
Right. But અહીંયા આ સ્લાઇડમાં I'm still confused how's the sunyata comes here.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
If we extract everything that we experience day in, day out, which is the objective reality, what is left is the Shunyata, and that Shunyata is the definition of Brahman as such. Arvind bhai, Anil bhai.
Yes. Okay. There was a Greek argument. I'll throw this discussion into some other location. વાણ હોય કોઈ ને વાણના બધા પાટિયા હોય તો વાણના પાટિયા ચૂના થાય ને તમે બધા જ પાટિયા કાઢી નાખો તો તમે એમ કહી શકો કે પેલું જ વાણ છે. Is there any original વાણ છે કે નહીં? અને સપોઝ કે તમે ના કહો કે ઓરિજિનલ વાણ નથી તો એને શું કહેવાનું? Is it not a વાણ? Every bit of that vessel is completely gone. It's new one. So, you cannot say it is the same one, but at the same time, what do you call it? So this is the kind of subjective and objectiveness comes from this kind of a difference. So that's what, see, the objective is something that we see outside of ourselves. Subjective is the one who perceives it, one who sees it. So one has to see it. That person has to be there.
As the same example in one of the slides further down says, there is a dialogue between Nagasena, which is another saint of Buddhism, and King Milind. He's explaining Rath, chariot. So, how do you explain? So, explain how this how Nagasena explains. There is nothing called chariot. Then he goes on saying, "આ તો પૈડા છે." પછી આ તો axle છે. And he basically keeps on defining, saying, "Oh, yeah, let me take this out, let me take this out, let me take this out." So now tell me, where is Rath? Where is chariot? When you took out all those component parts, what was left is nothing. So what he is explaining is this: what you call chariot is a combination of many different things. If you take out all those things, what is left is nothing. So that is the ultimate reality.
We have 1 minute left.
1 minute left, okay. Do you want to continue and finish this off?
Yeah.
Do you want to meet again and finish this off?
Fine. If everybody is okay, we are fine.
મારે તો જો જમવાનું બી બાકી છે.
Okay, let's carry it next time. Okay.
Yes.
Carry બધાને
Let's
બાકી
carry on next week.
Okay, that's fine.